I'm AC Brown, and you're listening to Is My Aura On Straight, a podcast designed to help you start living from your core instead of your conditioning. Each week, we'll discuss topics ranging from human design, astrology, metaphysics, spiritual self-development, and everything in between. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Is My Aura On Straight. I am your host, AC Brown. I am your psychic channel, spiritual guide, and entrepreneur, and I want to thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Is My Aura On Straight. As you can see from the title, this week we are talking about your Venus sign, but we are talking about your Venus sign from a few angles, but mostly from the angle of self-love. So if you are looking to love yourself a bit more, you need to look to your Venus sign. We've all heard about the Venus sign being the planet of love, and according to traditional astrology and some folklore, Venus actually represents the goddess of love, but it also represents money and desire. But in my opinion, and a lot of other astrologers' opinions as well, Venus equals value. It's self-love, it's self-esteem, it's the ability to receive and to appreciate the things that you hold high for yourself, because the first relationship that we do have with ourselves is ourselves. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I'm talking about, people. So thank you for joining me for this episode. So we're going to talk about Venus in a multitude of ways, but mostly from the aspect of self-love. And then at the end, I'm going to touch on some questions that a few people asked me on my Instagram. But first, I want to talk about Venus and what it means in either of the sexes chart. So in a woman's chart, Venus represents your taste, who you are. Venus reveals how a woman will be in her relationships, and sometimes it can also reveal where she'll find her mate. And then in a man's chart, it reveals his feminine side, as well as the type of woman he'll be attracted to. And like I said before, Venus not only just rules love, but Venus also has rulership over money and desire. So what you love, valuables, possessions, clothing, etc. I know one astrologer, Mecca Woods, she does Venus readings, because that's her thing. That's one of her specialties, focusing on Venus and Venus transits and things like that. But Venus, a lot of Indian astrologers use this for compatibility. If you want to know about compatibility, definitely look to an Indian astrologer, because it's very big in the Indian culture to be paired up. When you are arranged, they look at those things. But the biggest things that you want to know about Venus, and most importantly, especially when it comes to money, is where it is in your house system, in what house it's in. And so the second house, of course, is for wealth and savings. The 11th house is about income. So you want to look if you have Venus in either the second house, 11th house, and then also the 5th and the 9th house help you produce wealth. So the 2nd, 11th, 5th, and 9th house are, when it comes to money, and you wanting money and having your desires met, if you would hope to have your Venus in one of those houses. Now, for those who don't have it in any of those houses, that doesn't mean that you're not going to make any money or anything like that. One rule of thumb, which I've read a long time ago, is that when it comes to the two planets that people should be focused on when it comes to money are Jupiter and Venus. And it's like a little inside astrology joke, and I've read this several places. Jupiter rules millionaires, Venus rules billionaires, because Jupiter really is the expansion of it all, or I like to say the how you're going to make your money, and Venus is the why. That's how I like to put that. That's the best way, the best kind of explanation for that. So we're going to talk about Venus. I'm not going to get too in depth of what house it might be in for you. So we're going to just talk about what it means for you to have Venus in a particular sign and how you can help yourself in the self-love aspect. So we're going to start with Venus in Aries. And so when you have Venus in Aries, sometimes Venus in Aries people appear to be very confident, very sure of themselves. But most of the time they're like frightened little children. Venus in Aries people can be very vulnerable and very true romantic people. So what they need to do to honor their self-love and to be more, to love themselves more, is to really cherish the loving side of themselves, and to appreciate their vulnerability, appreciate their true romanticness, to appreciate that, because sometimes they have that very confident, I'm the shit kind of, really cocky kind of attitudes, Venus and Aries, but they want to lean into the softer side of them. They want to lean into the softer side. So that's important for Venus and Aries. For Venus and Taurus, people, of course, Taurus in general is about security. So Venus and Taurus people have a desperate need sometimes for security and obtaining possessions, through relationships. And they hold tight to possessions and hold tight to relationships. So what they should learn, really, that security comes from within. And me having a moon in Taurus, I can relate to that. That security is something that you make your own. You create your own foundations. You secure yourself. You cannot look to someone else to secure you. So if you have a Venus in Taurus, you cannot look to someone else to secure you. The best way for you to learn about self-love is that true stability, that true security is going to come from within, not from things or other people. You are to create your own security, create your own values, and then other people will then be just something for you to enjoy, if that makes sense. Then we have Venus in Gemini. Venus and Gemini people, what happens with them is sometimes they ignore their emotions, and they just brush them off to the side, and they never just take the time to stop and really figure out what's going on with them. So they become very stressed out, very tense, very sometimes they can't cope with emotional problems. So for them, for self-love, the best thing for them, for Venus and Gemini, is to learn how to deal with their emotions and learn how to stay in touch with their emotions on a day-to-day basis. How are you feeling? Anybody who I know, I remember had an ex who was a Venus in Gemini, and I would always ask him, how are you feeling? How's everything going? And it would be very, very hard for him to tap into that. It was almost like he was just he avoided his feelings so much that it was annoying. Like it was like things never happened. So if you have a Venus in Gemini, you want to not do that. So Venus in Cancer. So Venus in Cancer people can become too dependent on other people for their emotional well-being. They can, well, as you all know, Cancers in general, but especially Venus and Cancers, they're very loving. They're very, they want to take care of. And so Venus in Cancer people have a tendency to, of course, put people before themselves. So the goal for them for self-love is to learn how to self-care for themselves, learn how to nurture themselves, learn how to not let other people's moods affect them at all. That's really important. And to make sure that everything that they do for other people, that they're doing for themselves. They're the epitome of, you can't pour from an empty cup kind of people. And in Venus and Cancer people, you want to make sure that your cup is full, your cup runneth over before you start expanding that energy to others. Then you have Venus and Leo. Venus and Leo people are, how can I put this? They need to learn that love really can be a little bit because Venus, as you know, well, Leo people, as you know, are just very like, just bold and very prideful. Venus in Leo people need to make sure that they're not afraid of their vulnerable side, but not in a way like Gemini avoids it. Leos are more afraid that it's going to be taken advantage of. Venus and Leo people. So they are protecting themselves in a very different way because they don't want you to use them. A Venus in Gemini they just don't want you to, they don't want to talk about it. So they have too much pride when it comes to their love languages and their love styles and showing that. And they just want to be a little bit mindful of that. So if you're a Venus and Leo, the best way for self-love for you is to not be afraid of your vulnerable side. And to know that everybody's not going to be out to get you or like to take you off your pedestal, if you want to say, to bring you down, if you want to look at it like that. Then you have Venus and Virgo. Venus and Virgo people are very hard on themselves. And sometimes they can undermine and undervalue their gifts and talents. But the biggest thing that they want to learn and walk away from is that sometimes everything is not going to be, everything's not going to be perfect. Especially when it comes to the way that they love and the type of things that they are passionate about. Everything's not going to be perfect. That they want to know that it's best for them to know that like their Venus and Virgo people, they almost want to have like a storybook romance kind of thing. And then when it comes to their self-love, they want everything to be perfect. They want that everything to be in line. And that's not how it's always going to be. Like for me, in my opinion, because I've dealt with Venus and Virgo people, they're very step by step when it comes to love. And when it comes to their self-love, I feel that they need to not be so regimented in how they are to love themselves. They're like, oh, well, I need to do this in order to do that. And they need to know that perfection is an overall kind of journey. It's not like the destination. Like, so it's not like when they're perfect, things are going to happen. It's always going to be that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense to the Venus and Virgos, because they're a little bit, I think Venus and Virgos have it really hard when they have a lot of like water in their charts. That can be a little challenging. Then you have your Venus and Libra people. Venus and Libra people are just so romantic, so, loving, so giving of themselves. And so they also are similar, in my opinion, to Venus in Cancers when it comes to self-love, is that they need to really focus on and value themselves and love themselves, regardless of how other people treat them. So it's almost like the opposite. Like a Venus and Cancer person will, give and not love themselves, but give all the stuff to other people. And a Venus and, Libra person will, give, but they'll be like, well, if you don't give to me, I'm not going to give to you. And so they need to be a little bit more just valuing themselves and not, feeling like, love has to be this like evil thing. And their self-love has to be this evil thing. It can be an enjoyable thing. It can be nice. It can be awesome kind of thing. And then you have Venus and Scorpio. Venus and Scorpio people. Venus and Scorpio people. And someone asked a question about Venus and Scorpio. And I'm going to answer that at the end. But Venus and Scorpio people, it's very intense. And I will say this because the question um, that, and I'll talk about that, and the question that the person who has Venus Scorpio is perfect for self-love. But I will say for Venus and Scorpio people that they need to have a meaning in their life. They need to focus all that intense energy that they put into loving other people. They need to put that into themselves or something. So I'll leave it there because the question that the person asks ties into that. So if you're a Venus in Scorpio, listen to the end. It's really important about what the person asked. And then we have Venus in Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius people they funny. They're funny. But mostly sometimes they're always learning, socializing, traveling kind of thing. And what Venus in Sagittarius people really need to do is to slow down so they can reflect, slow down and relax so they can discover who they truly are internally. A lot of Venus in Sagittarius people and Sagittarius in general, sometimes you say, oh, they cheat or they're cheaters, especially sometimes Venus and Sagittarius people. And it's really because Venus and Sagittarius people remind me of manifesting generators because they're always going, they're always busy. And so they get into relationships emotionally with people. And then it's not really what they want. And then when they figure that out, then they're like, oh, I want to do something else. So the biggest self-love kind of tip for Venus in Sagittarius is to slow down and make sure that they discover who they are internally and what they really want. And the more that they do that, the more that they can honor, the partners that they choose. Then you have Venus in Capricorn, and Capricorn is about achievement and recognition. And so what happens is that Venus and Capricorn need to, for self-love, instead of worrying about achievement and approval, they need to try and nourish themselves, and take care of things not so seriously, but to lighten up, and to let their hair down, and to have fun. Venus and Capricorn people, have fun before you crack, because Venus and Capricorn people, they're very uptight, very systematic, as you can tell just by if you're a regular Capricorn person. So imagine the way you love is systematic or checking boxes. That's a lot. So just have fun with it and be a little bit more, relaxed. Then you have Venus in Aquarius. Venus in Aquarius people, they're so busy, of course, helping other people, trying to fix the world, that they often can be Venus and Aquarius people they're the life of the party. They're around everybody. They want to be around everybody, because they're afraid of being alone. And so here's another Venus sign that self-love for them means slowing down, worrying about themselves, seeing what they want, be internally looking within, that kind of thing. Then you have Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is just a sweet, sweet fantasy. It's just a sweet, sweet fantasy. I'm a Venus in Pisces, so escapism. It's all sorts of things, but the biggest thing for Venus in Pisces is to really search for our identities within and not externally. Sometimes Venus in Pisces can escape with drugs, alcohol, sex, things like that, instead of dealing with yourself. And so it's really about holding up a mirror and really loving yourself for who you are and how you do the things that you do. So those are the Venus signs. So I'm going to read some questions. So these questions are really good. So somebody asks, Venus in Aquarius, 6th house, what's up with that? And just, so I don't know if anybody watches Saturday Night Live. I still watch it. I love Saturday Night Live. But Kenan Thompson has a skit. It's a TV. It's like a game show called What's Up With That? And it goes, what's up with that? But it's just Google it. Google what's up with that SNL. And then you'll learn the song. But anyway, So Venus in Aquarius in the sixth house. So the sixth house rules health, work, and routine. And so when you have Venus in Aquarius, you're very innovative when it comes to love and things like that. But you love doing things for your partner, and it's always about the little things that you do for them. And it sometimes can be too broad. I would say for Venus in Aquarius, especially in the sixth house, you're just going to be very, sometimes a little routine-y and day to day, minute by minute, loving people. Try and like loosen up a little bit at the sixth house. But because you have it in Aquarius, it's going to be very free flowing sometimes. And then another person asks how which house it's in changes how it affects us. Each house rules something different. And so it's going to affect you in a different way where it is. Like I talked about Venus in, the second, 11th, 5th, and ninth house, because those are evolving money. So if it's in the first house, that's regarding yourself, your appearance, your body image. Second house, like I said, money, income, daily routines. Your third house is about communication, your mind. Your fourth house is about the home, family, emotions, foundations, your mother. The fifth house is like love, romance, creativity, childlike activity, self-expression. Your sixth house, like I said, health, fitness, systems, is very analytical. Your seventh house is relationships, marriage, contracts, partners, all of that stuff. Your eighth house is really, they like to say the eighth house is dark, but it's not. It's really about sex and intimacy, and finances, inheritances, justice. And then you have your ninth house, which is about travel, wisdom, higher education. Your 10th house is about career and long-term goals. Your 11th house is about group, friends, and awareness, hopes and wishes in the future. And like I said, with money, it's about income. And then your 12th house is about endings, closure, spirituality, karma, the afterlife, the hidden realms, the subconscious. So depending on where it falls under or falls in those houses, that's what's going to be the theme of why it's there. So the person who had Venus in Scorpio say, tell me about Venus in Scorpio. I can't find love. And how can I be successful in it? So Scorpio rules the eighth house, in general, just the sign Scorpio. And the eighth house, like I said, has to do with intimacy, sex, shared finances, inheritances, taxes, resources, partners' resources, mysterious. Some people say it might be like a dark house. But what happens with Venus and Scorpio is very intense. Venus and Scorpio can be very obsessive. It's very passionate. Trust doesn't come easily for them. People who are Venus and Scorpio most likely have been cheated on, so that messes up their trust. So it's really about not being so obsessive. If you listen to what I said about Venus and Scorpio, it's really about you as a Venus and Scorpio having something outside of yourself that you're passionate about that doesn't involve other people. When you have like a good career, when you can be really passionate about something, when you do get into a relationship, you are not so immersed with this person or obsessed with them. And obsessed is not a bad way. And I don't want, people to be like, oh, I have a Venus and Scorpio, I'm crazy, or, I'm a stalker or anything like that. It's just very intense because you love hard. Most water signs love hard. So Venus in Cancer, Venus in Pisces, Venus in Scorpio, they love hard. It's really about the balance. And Venus in Scorpio is probably, out of all of the signs, I'm not going to lie, Venus and Scorpio energy can be a very intense relationship for the other person. Because when Venus and Scorpio people find someone who they click with, who they get along with, who, gels with them, they attach to them and they feel like they found someone who they can be vulnerable with emotionally. So it's very challenging for that to be overlooked, and for a Venus and Scorpio to just, be like, oh, well, they're just there. It's like, no, they're there and I want them in my life. And it becomes very intense. So I would say to this person who, who has the Venus and Scorpio, who can't find love, just allow love to take a back seat for a while. Because if you are looking for it right now, that means that any version of it might even be the version that you don't even truly want, might show up for you. And then you're just going to attach to it because they have, like, let's say 60% of the qualities out of the 100% that you're looking for. And you're like, hey, they got 60%. I'll take this because I'm not sure if 100% will come around. And so I find that Venus and Scorpio people sometimes love from a place of lack instead of from making someone an addition to what they're doing. And looking for someone to make them whole, which you shouldn't be looking at that. So that's my advice for, that person who had the Venus and Scorpio and they can't find love. Stop looking for it. Put all of your focus and that intense passion into something outside of yourself. Whether it's your career, your business, projects, whatever you're doing, put that outside of yourself. So that's my advice for the people who ask questions. So, Venus is a great place to look and see where your Venus is. Number one, read about that and, just see where it is, because the Venus, like I said, it's tied to desire. It's tied to money. And, it's the, like I said, Jupiter is the how, and then Venus is the why. You're going to do something. And also the moon has a lot to do with your money too. Those three planets, Jupiter, Venus, and your moon, are going to be attached to money as well. So that's what I have for you all for this. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm learning about how to self-love through Venus. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Is My Aura on Straight. I just want to say to everyone who does listen how much I appreciate you all listening to me on the podcast, and it's just been a good thing for me. So not only with you listening helps you, but it helps me too. And like I told you before, I'm launching a YouTube channel. I'm going to put the link there. It's nothing there but podcast episodes right now, but definitely please subscribe if you want to, because I will be releasing my new YouTube episodes soon. I'm very excited about that, but you'll still get the podcast. The podcast is not going anywhere. And stay tuned for some other cool interviews that are coming up. And make sure you all have a great day filled with good vibes and great energy. And remember, don't let anybody fuck with you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Is My Aura on Straight. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at AC Brown, and also check out my website for products and services at www.acbrown.com. And until we meet again, make sure you have a great week filled with good vibes and good energy.